Welcome to the Sollu Kaburz podcast. Today we shall try to make sense of this Netflix series called The Crown in a pathetic British accent, which of course is a residual effect of an aristocratic hangover of Anglophilia, which lingers in your mind post-watching. As far as the review goes, everything in British accent sounds smart, and we hope that Netflix doesn't strike down this podcast with copyright and let us feature on their app and give us some popularity. To make sense of the series with me is film critic Rahul Desai with me. Thank you very much, Rahul, for doing this. Welcome to the podcast.
Good to be here. That's actually not a bad British accent, honestly.
Oh, thanks. I like. There are two types of British accent, right? So there are like when you talk about posh, right? The ones that
Yeah,
the royals speak, I'm not a big fan of because they're so tight in the teeth. Like,
yeah,
welcome to the podcast. I like the Winston Churchill style, which is more open. Right, Your Majesty, welcome. Something like that. The more they open
yeah,
their mouth, the better.
yeah. There are two, like even in the accents, like there are two different kinds of posh accents. There's a working class posh accent, which is like Winston Churchill,
Mm,
and I think like there's the royal family who are basically so. I mean, they are so trained to be in their role
yeah.
for so many years that even their language becomes part of it. So I think that's actually good performances, if anything.
Yeah, and also right. Don't you think there's some naturality to it because the life is just so tense, right? Because they must be like tense from within. You know what I mean? And that kind of reflects in their accent. I guess it's my guess.
Yeah, it is actually. That's what I meant because like good performances because it's there's a thought behind it, right? It's
Mm,
not like they actually talk like that, or for that matter, the royals actually talk like that. But for as part of a story or as a as filmmaking, I
mm,
think it's a very smart decision. Like Prince Philip's accent, especially the way he speaks, he
mm.
barely moves his lips. It's like he's always constantly struggling to be part of like that environment and that role as we saw in season 3
And we
also.
are
uh,
we are supposed to believe that this guy was a Greek. So that's
oh yeah, that comes with the territory, I think.
yeah, right. And what are your memories of British monarchy movies, right? So, for example, I have my memories would be I watched Mrs. Brown when I was young, The Queen, King's Speech. What about you?
I mean, I've always been wary of British monarchy films. First of all, Oscar bait. It's like very
Hmm.
easy to like cow over Hollywood, and they get like totally bowled over by that. But I was never so interested in the monarchy in these royal movies or series or whatever.
Hmm.
And my parents were actually very much into. Uh, I think my mother was very interested in the royal family and in the history of the British monarchy, and she used to keep talking about it. So I think my first experience watching anything related to it was Queen only. I started
Hmm.
very late and very reluctantly. I watched it also because she won the Oscar for that, Helen Mirren.
Hmm.
So I was like, okay, let me see what it's about. And I thought again it was Peter Morgan, obviously. So
Yeah.
I thought it was a fair film, very good performance, and I was like, okay, King's Speech I actually very much enjoyed when it came out, but
Yes.
over the years, it's sort of dimmed in my estimation. But I still I'm a big fan of Colin Firth, so I watch most of his films, and
Hmm.
I really thought, and when I started watching Crown, as soon as I saw Elizabeth's father, I was like, I'm constantly
Exactly.
like merging worlds and all, and I
It's
was like,
like
okay, Colin
yeah,
Firth.
it's like if Netflix somehow magically merges King's Speech before the start of season one and the Queen
Yeah,
after season four, it kind of fits
it
in
does,
in
it
its
does exactly.
entirely. And also the style of it, right? This slow
For
pot
sure.
boiling
Hmm.
drama that unfolds at its own pace, kind of style, right?
So much season 4 was so reminiscent of Queen. Like Peter
Yeah.
Morgan, literally, I don't think he was even aware of how much he was taking from Queen and how much he was
Mm,
inspired by Queen because there were scenes that were similar, like Ellen Mirren and the stag and her going hunting and her thinking in the fields and all that. I mean, one of the best episodes of season 4 was for me that same one. Even though the symbolism was so heavy with the stags and with Diana making an entrance and I thought like yeah he repeated formulas and all but it fit very well and as you said they'd make for a very good companion piece.
yeah, and this crown basically it's like have you seen one of those British Pathé? films on YouTube, black and white, of depicting the old
Not really.
British, right? So it's like these folks just hiring great cameras and Hans Zimmer music for introduction and just put them inside the Buckingham Palace. That's what Crown is in a nutshell. But it is just much more dazzling, much more grand,
Yeah.
and every department. I mean, I'm not really a series watcher myself because I don't have time and I don't watch anything that is older than season one. But fortunately, I started watching Crown when it was in its season one, and hence I followed over the years. And it's just, I mean, how can you count the number of series in Netflix or anywhere which is just great in every department, man? Like all the way from the little ones to I mean, if there were Emmy awards for casting directors, they would win.
Yeah.
Production, yeah, production design and cinematography. I don't want to use the word cinematography because you had a tweet about how people judge cinematography relating to the story. I don't want to get into
Right.
that mold. Maybe I am, maybe I'm not, but
Yeah.
nevertheless, great, great, well shot, well
Yeah.
shot, and I mean, well shot is an understatement. And my ultimate favorite of all the departments is the writing, right? So I'd like to begin with writing, and then editing, acting. These three for me are like just top notch. And writing the lines, right? Like even in the season for the little one lines, right? It's like the Anne in that episode when the Anne and the mother are having this one-on-one, and there's like there's so much to make you happy around, but how come none of it does, right? It's
Hmm.
just such
Hmm.
a
Yeah.
lines like you're my wife, I'm your queen. And
Right.
basically and the style of the Crown is some way it's like in the action movie the showdown piece is the end where you when all the vehicles meet and crash boom bang. The showdown piece in Crown is when is the audience room.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I was thinking while
Mm,
watching season 4 too, because I was trying to figure out a way how to write about season 4, because there have been 3 seasons. So if you're going to review a show like The Crown, you can't keep repeating what you keep saying, because
mm,
it's pretty much the same thing. The filmmaking is still very sophisticated. The characters are more or less the same. It's just that the arcs have evolved. And so I was thinking about how to put it. And for me, the conversations are the set pieces, right? The
mm,
words are the set pieces in this, because there is no drama. It's a royal family. So technically, it's one of the most boring families in the world and one of the most uptight families in the world. So how do you create good cinema out of it? How do you create good stories out of it? It has to be in the writing. It has to
mm.
be in the way they write the lines, in the way it's delivered. And especially the sittings with between the queen and all our prime ministers over the
Yeah.
years, some of the best writing, some of the best conversations happen there, and no other series in my estimation has the pressure of having to make every word matter, every
Mm,
moment, every scene matter the way this does. Because there is hardly anything else out. We can't go outside their world. We can only stay in their palaces and in their little relationships, and most of the relationships are superficial, and they are forced into a certain constraint. And
performance,
so I
as you
think
write it, performance, it's a performance.
yeah, the entire thing is a performance. And like I feel like the and it is the most expensive Netflix series, I think. And they've spared no expense, and I can see why. And
Yeah.
it's ironic that it's the most expensive Netflix series, and all the drama is only in the acting and in the performances and in the little dialogues between each other, because it's really not about the visuals if you think about it,
Yeah,
because they live there.
exactly.
It just so happens that that Netflix decided to make it authentic. They could have very well, scaled down on the production design and the values, and still, have such good actors and still convince us of, the environment. But there is such extra effort here, because everything is in the background, and they
Mm.
are not taking, they are not like really putting forward or putting the filmmaking in the foreground, which is one of the great aspects of the show.
And talking about season four, what are your? I'll start with why do you start about why do you start with good things every time? Let's start about nitpicks. What are your nitpicks with season four?
My, I mean, season 4, I honestly, like, if you ask me what, if I have any problems with The Crown ever, I really can't come up with like legitimate answers, because
Mm,
for me it just sort of flows, and I'm very used to the episodic format, and
mm,
every episode concentrating on a different aspect of the family, different characters of the family. uh, I had no problems as such. Obviously, like, Prince Charles has become quite an asshole.
mm.
And you can understand why, because most of season 3 he was the victim.
Right.
Now he's the villain because he's basically crossed over, because they
Yeah.
brainwashed him so much. They have constrained him so much. Like, the best episode across Crown, across 4 seasons, is the Prince Charles episode in season 3.
Mm. Yep.
Where he gives where he becomes the Prince of Wales and he gives the speech, and
Yeah.
then his mother tells him that nobody really cares
Hmm.
about his feelings and about his thoughts. So I felt so bad for him in the previous season,
Mm.
that he's just become the people that he so detested in this season, and I think he's done a very good job of it. And you feel like slapping him almost every
Yeah.
frame in this season 4, and I felt like he was one of the strong points this season. A lot of people have criticized uh, his performance or Prince Charles per se, but I think they're confusing the character with with the actor, because the actor
Mm.
is so good at being annoying and being a terrible person, that it's very natural to hate his character. And just because there is someone in front of him that makes him look bad, which is Diana,
Yeah.
because last season there was no one. Last season his mother was above him, so he
Mm.
was the victim. Now he's above Diana, so Diana is the victim. This cycle keeps going on every season. We've
Right.
seen that, and I really thought, like, for me, I don't think there was any big flaw this season, because even the way they changed the soundtrack this season was shocking to me, because
Mm.
uh,
They
even
had
when the
reggae
trailer,
music.
yeah, and they had like all kinds of modern sort of hijinks just put
Mm.
into season 4, of course, which goes so well with Diana's appearance into the series, because
Mm.
she is bringing a new perspective.
And the
She's
era as well, right? I mean, that was the era where the black West
yeah,
Indians were, kind of getting into the pop culture
yeah,
of the British conscious and so on.
yeah, and like 80s and late 80s, and also you're bound to see changes, and I like the fact that the soundtracks change with it. And I'm not just talking about the songs that they use, or
Mm.
or the songs that Diana you see dancing to when she's
Mm-mm.
doing her roller skating and her ballet. But I'm also talking about like just the background score, because it's
Mm.
become so edgy now.
Mm.
Just even in the trailer of this season 4, before the show premiered, if you noticed in the trailer, the most striking aspect of the trailer was the music. It was like a horror film.
Right.
It had this very, like, it had this very distinct sort of sound that was just piercing, and it gave you it, like, it's basically designed to stress you out, and that went very well with Diana's sort of entry into the royal family, because
Right.
there is so much tension. There is so much.
Yeah.
There's so much not right in this season, because there is finally an outsider, as opposed to all the outsiders within the family. So I
Mm.
think they got it spot on.
I mean, you speak of the fact that people are biased against the Charles and they're getting confused with the character. Do you think that is the case with me? See, because I am kind of not. I felt caricaturish with Margaret Thatcher's portrayal, but am I actually hating the caricature, or am I hating the political leanings of that person itself? That's making me hate the character, making me hate the performance. I mean, what do you think? Like Meryl Streep versus Crown's Margaret Thatcher. So, what do you think of that portrayal?
I mean, to be honest, I think both of them are in their way very good Margaret Thatchers. Like Meryl Streep, it's difficult to compare because that was a film. So
Mm,
the rhythm of her performance was very different from a series where Margaret Thatcher has to appear in almost all of the 10 episodes, and it's not so much about her politics either. We are seeing her also as a person and as almost a companion to the queen in this, because
mm,
finally the women are taking over. Like finally she has someone who she can empathize with
yeah.
for all the wrong reasons, because even Thatcher is disliked, as
Yes.
is the queen within her own family, and Thatcher has been disliked by even by the Brits for so long, for so many years. But
Mm,
the fact is, she was a very powerful prime minister. She was one of their most powerful prime ministers. Say what you may about her politics. Obviously, we are not going to agree with it, but there always comes a divisive figure like that in the history of every country.
right.
You have to decide whether to judge the cinematic portraits of them on basis of their politics, on basis of how they've sort of been represented on screen as human beings. Because I thought Gillian Anderson was quite spectacular in most of her scenes as Thatcher. And I get why people think it might be a caricature, but Thatcher was a very peculiar person as far as her physicality and her gestures went. If you look at videos of her speeches from the past, from the 70s, or even if you read what she said, you can imagine like someone. I can imagine this sort of representation of her on screen. At times, yeah, I mean, Gillian Anderson sort of got carried away every now and then with the way she sort of tilted her neck and used her throat while giving the performance. But I really I like the fact that they did not judge her character the same way that the royal family isn't allowed to judge anyone or anything. That is their duty to do nothing, basically, which is the most famous line. And I think that the fact that they treated Thatcher as just another prime minister, but someone significant in context of the Queen's rule, I had no problems with it. I especially liked the episode where they went off against each other.
And this is exactly why I'm not a film critic and you are, because for me, some of the best episodes in the season 4 were the ones where Diana was introduced, right? Episode 2 and 3, right? I mean, for example, this is again bias, right? So there come these women in history, right? I mean, before Diana, we could call someone like Marilyn Monroe as such fascinating, charming woman, about whom you can just these people are like, you go on this voyeuristic browsathon about their stories, right? It's just binge browsing about their life and where they are, and Diana is that sort of figure, and probably that bias is coming into my sort of judgment. But I really thought that girl literally captured everything that Diana stood for, right? Like, for example, just this pure, how can I put it? The pure radiance, the glow of the woman, right? And 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 the innocence too, which was in, again, season 2, I believe. Sorry, episode 2, I believe. And I think episode 2 and 3 were great, and episode 3 especially, because it was about this fairy tale wedding, right? And for me, the symbolism of this entire Crown series is just this facade that they put up. It went to an extreme in that episode, under this garb of fairy tale wedding, right? So for me, that episode kind of felt like symbolic of the what this entire thing stands for, in a sense. I mean, we can talk about Diana for hours and hours, and you wrote an article. It was all Diana. And
Yeah, it was.
yeah. And although, before you go ahead, although her screen presence was not as much as you would think by looking at the article, it's the presence that matters throughout the series, and the effect of that presence that has on the other characters, in a sense.
Yeah, exactly. And that's I think that's what I wrote also, because even in the episodes where you don't see her, you can sense that she's haunting every frame, because everything about the series is about her, about the guilt Charles feels, about the guilt probably the Queen feels to an extent, because she knows that Diana is someone that the Queen once was. If you remember season 1, in the first episode, she was also as carefree as Diana in her own way. And they, when they went to Africa as part of the Commonwealth tour or whatever, she was also like, there was a life she had, and Diana reminded her of that. And the fact that now she is also like putting Diana in a cage, there is guilt in every family member within the family. And yeah, Emma Corrin she got the spirit of Diana. Look, like, I'll tell you what my story about Diana is, that she was legitimately, I think, my first celebrity crush as a child in the 90s. Okay, and someone who wasn't a movie star. It's very natural to have crushes and love movie stars and people who are in the public eye for entertainment and all. But she was something different. She was, I did, because it was in the 90s, I did not see her when she was 19 or 20, when she got married, during the fairy tale wedding, when she was very young and got married. I only used to see photos or hear stories about that, and I used to read about it, and I was fascinated with her. Like most of the world was, and for a reason, because there was something about her.
Mm.
And I watched every possible film there is to watch about Diana. I watched the Naomi Watts one. I watched a bunch of others. I will watch the ones that come out. I'm looking forward to Elizabeth Debicki's performance in the next 2 seasons as Diana, because she's also a phenomenal actress, and she
Yeah.
will play Diana in the 90s as I knew her, the one
Mm.
that I actually was infatuated with. But Emma Corrin really sort of depicted such a I don't know. It was such a fragile and volatile version of a girl who has been wronged, of a girl who doesn't know what she's getting into, of a commoner who
Mm.
doesn't know what she's getting into. And none of us imagined Diana like that. Both most
Yeah.
of us have been obsessed with her, and we only saw her as the victim for the longest time, and which she was in the
Mm.
end. She was a victim of a legacy, but to see her actually in the flesh flawed, and to see that she had an eating disorder, she had psychological problems, of course, which was all a cycle because of what she got into,
Yeah.
and she was insecure. She was a young person who was just uprooted from a world and put into a fairy tale that's actually a nightmare. So you can imagine the effect that has on someone as young as her. And I love that Emma Corrin just went for it, and even the makers went for it. They did not hold back from showing Diana warts and all, and
Mm.
sort of shattered our image of her also in a way, because she is a child in this series.
Yeah.
She'll only grow up in the next season.
Right.
Even though she becomes a mother in this series, she's still a child. And
Yeah.
some of the best scenes happen when she is still very insecure about Charles. That scene with what's her name at the restaurant when they finally meet with
Yeah.
Camilla.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
that scene, that was basically the entire series was sort of hinging on that scene. And I loved the fact that it was just such Bollywood writing. It was just a double meaning in everything they were
Yes.
saying. I don't share, and like stuff like that. They went for it, and Diana can afford to do that in this season. She won't be doing it in the next few seasons
Yeah.
because she's growing up, and she's going to now blossom into the independent sort of figure that she becomes in the 90s. She's going to become a royal family of her own. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we can go on and on about Diana, and I have like great history with her, and I'm very glad that it didn't let it down, at least in this series.
And my story, being a 90s kid, was the only memory I have was just reading about the news of the car crash when I was very young.
Right.
I was 5 years old, and I've only heard my mom saying that she was very beautiful. And then obviously, I went on, and when I
Yeah.
grew up, I went on reading about Diana, just like I read about Marilyn Monroe and so on. But when I was talking about nitpicks of season 4, do you think this is a Diana propaganda in a sense? Did it feel like that season 4? Don't you think they didn't show her as flawed enough? If you know what I mean.
Yeah, I am actually of the other like opinion that they actually showed her as quite flawed. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
as fickle and as terrible as Charles has been in this
Mm,
season, I thought they were at an age of Diana where they could actually show her, as a child,
mm,
as an immature person who cannot deal with the stress of being in the situation she is. Like, if anything, the Diana propaganda will know if in the next few seasons how it goes.
yeah.
But for now, if anything, she's. I mean, and you can't call it also like propaganda if this is what happened. Like, if she actually
Mm,
entered a family who was against her, and who was against everything she stood for, and got envious of her because she started sort of stealing the limelight, and she
mm,
became a celebrity of her own. It's very, I feel like at the same time, like they haven't been very subtle about it, because I'd see,
mm,
for one, I didn't like the scenes where you see the queen, her mother, and her sister
right.
talk. Every time they are talking about Diana with Charles in the New Zealand and Australia tour,
Right.
they'd cut back to scenes of the three women talking on the dinner table and bitching about Diana, basically, like
Mm,
like three women at a kitty party sort of thing.
yeah.
I didn't like that. Like, they didn't need to do that. We know
Yeah.
what the royal family is thinking. All we
Mm,
needed to actually see was the queen's face when she actually met Diana when she came back, and when Diana came to her asking for her help because there were problems in her marriage. That's all we needed to see. So those were little, bit too filmy, I'd say.
Yeah.
But I get where they're going. They're going to paint Diana as the victim, and rightfully so, because I think all of us believe that she has been wronged, and she became a victim of like the third wheel in a marriage, even though she was the wife. So I think it's going to be very interesting that there are two more seasons, not one now.
And also we have a crush. So yeah, we're no wonder about the. I'm just kidding. And because the reason I bring this question up, because I was reading the statements from some royal historian in this particular series. Every member of the royal family comes out as badly except Diana. It's totally one-sided. It's totally against Prince Charles. Royal biographer
Right.
criticized the season, portraying British royal family as villains, stating that the crown's royals are wild, cruel distortions of people. Like,
I mean, I say, look, these are historiographers speaking and
yeah,
biographers speaking, right? Like, and
yeah,
you don't see films to see an accurate depiction of
yep.
history. You don't see it for authenticity only. I
Mm,
mean, there are reasons they are fictional. Like, they would have made a documentary, no? Otherwise,
yeah.
like, why are we watching
Like,
The Crown?
yeah,
So,
Prince Philip made that one in season 3.
oh yeah, in season three, right? Like, and even the documentaries are propaganda in their own way. We know that. So,
Yeah.
I mean, like I don't buy this thing about like getting experts to weigh in on history and all, because that is
Mm,
their job. History is their job. History is a reason it's called history is because it's in the past and it's going to remain there. There are going to be different interpretations of it in the future, and
mm,
every interpretation is not going to be the truth. It's going to be
right.
different degree of lies. It's going to be I mean, lies is just a way of saying that it's never going to be the same again. And it's like Chinese whispers. Every time someone remakes something about
Mm,
history, it's going, you're going to see it distorted slightly more, and that's what we call dramatic license, and that's what we call
mm.
suspension of disbelief. It's up to the viewer how much they want to take with a pinch of salt.
Yeah, just quoting Mark Twain here, get the facts right, and then what did he say? Get the facts right first, then you can
Hmm.
play with the fiction, and something on those lines, he said. So yeah, I
Yeah,
think
well,
that's fair
they
enough.
got the facts right, so I
Yeah,
mean, you can't really argue with that.
yeah. And one more question I had was, do you think that role of Charles, which the actor was brilliant in season 3 because he was a young boy. Did you think he was convincing enough as a 38-year-old man? Did you think that he was still boyish in a sense, or it was
So,
quite fantastic?
yeah, so it's interesting you mentioned that, because the Crown does have an age problem,
Mm,
clearly. Like, they haven't been clear about eras changing and the ages of the actors, sort of changing in sync with it.
mm.
It has been all over the place, because if you think about it, in season three
They,
also, when Olivia Colman came
yeah,
in,
yeah, they do it with brilliant writing. Yeah, just like an old bat.
yeah, just like an old bat. Like, that's very first episode, and I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, how old? Because she looks like 25 years older than Claire Foy, but
Mm,
it was actually only 10 years or 12
mm.
years. There was not much. It was like, and with this season 3 and season 4 is, we are seeing span like some 15 or 20 years, and Olivia Colman really hasn't really aged a lot. She was
Yeah.
old to begin. So
Mm,
they've taken a lot of liberties with the age, and even Princess Margaret for that matter. Like, she was
yeah.
stunning in the first two seasons. Then you suddenly see her turn into, like, in season 3, she's suddenly old.
Mm,
And the difference is actually only 12 or 13 years, because it's in the 1960s we enter. So, you have to sort of just take that. But of course, he
mm.
was very convincing as a boy, Charles. And,
Yeah.
even now in
100%.
my head, he's not 38, and he is
Mm,
38 at the end of season 4. But in my head, he's still 25, because that's
exactly.
his mentality, and that's the mentality. That is the kind of phase he's in. As he's still a child rebelling against his mother in a way,
Mm,
and sure, he doesn't look old, and but he does get a lot of, like, very eerily, he gets a lot of Charles right. If you look at Charles actually speak on television and all, with the hunching and with the way he sort of like uh, uh, pronounces
yeah.
his vowels and all, it just he tries, he actually goes a long way in getting the specifics right, but the age is always going to be a problem. Like, I'm pretty sure in the next season, when all these actors are not going to be there, in
Yeah.
season 5 and season 6, even though the difference is only 5 years, the next season will be probably 3 or 4 years into the 90s.
Yeah.
We'll see totally different actors who are like 20 years older. So
Yeah.
it's just one of those things.
And and I wonder who will they bring in to play Charles. I wonder if they have already bought someone in, because funnily the 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 actor who played the abdicated king in the season one is the
Yeah,
same
yeah.
actor who played Charles in the Queen.
He did, and I noticed that, and I thought he was an excellent Charles in the Queen because
Exactly.
he
Yes.
actually looks like him. Like
Yes.
he doesn't have to act like him or anything. He just looks like him. And even in this, I was like, yeah, I mean, like this guy, being the abdicated king, I get, but then who's going to play Charles in the 90s,
Mm.
sort of thing. But I'm sure they've been spot on with their casting. They have an age
Yeah, yeah,
problem
yeah.
for sure, but the actors they get in very eerily resemble their real life counterparts. And I'm not saying that physically, but they just spiritually they are very close to
Yeah.
what the real people are. I'm
Right.
not saying like I know the royal family and I talk to them on the
Mm.
phone every day or anything, but what we know of them in history and the amount of documentaries I've seen on them over the years, uh, yeah, I'm actually very excited about season 5 whenever that
Yeah.
happens 2 years down the line,
Exactly.
because there's so much that's going to be the main season, because you're going to see Diana sort of really push the envelope and like head towards that very gloomy day in 97 when
I just wonder, right? So it's like, let's do a little calculation here. So 1990s is what they're going to predict in the next season 4 and 5, right? And then they would how far ahead are we looking at if they had to come down to the episode of Harry and his missus Meghan Markle? How far do you think? 3 years, 4 years down the line, I think there will be a point where the season and the real life will converge, right? I think, is that there where they're gonna end? I just wonder. I'm just
no,
speculative fiction.
yeah, like as of now, Peter Morgan said that there are going to be only 5 and 6. So season 6 is going to be the last season.
Oh,
He can go on forever, honestly, because if you look at it, the royal family has come full cycle, because Harry
mm,
and Meghan Markle have just detached from the royal family. So they did what Diana wanted to do, what Diana
yes.
technically did, and
Mm,
they rebelled against the family. And I'm sure a lot of people want to see that and would love to see
yes.
that.
Oh, yes,
But
please.
maybe like 10 years down the line, Peter Morgan might just start a new sort of
Mm.
series of The Crown, which deals with
I
William
mean,
and Charles's legacy.
forget about Harry and Meghan Markle. Even Kate Middleton and
Yeah,
William
yeah.
also had a lot of drama. I mean, they
They
were not
had a lot of drama, and
in
there
the.
were a lot of problems in their relationship. They had broken up a couple of times before getting married. There were problems with the royal family itself. I'm sure Pippa has a role to play at some point because she
Yeah.
became so famous. But like this is see the thing is they can do all this like 10 or 15 years down the line. They can't just keep doing this in over the next 5 or 6 years. They have to
Correct.
take a
Correct.
break at because your natural ending, even when I saw season 1, episode 1 of The Crown, in my head, the natural ending was Diana dying.
Mm,
Right from the time the Queen was being sworn in the first season, and right from her own young adulthood was taken away from her, I was like, this will reach a literal, sort of full circle when
mm,
Diana actually dies and her life is actually snuffed out, because we are only seeing lives metaphorically snuffed out throughout the first 5 seasons.
right.
This is going to 97 has to be the end point, and I think that's a smart decision to end it there, because that's how we will remember the crown eventually.
Right. And do you think they're going to hire the Tony Blair specialist for Tony Blair? Do you know?
Who,
So the actor who played Tony Blair in The Queen is apparently a Tony Blair specialist who also plays Tony Blair's on stage, and I just wonder if they hire him. It's just that's one funny
yeah,
thing.
he's quite a famous actor too, right? Like Michael something, I don't know.
Michael
But yeah, he
Sheen.
was
Michael Sheen.
Michael Sheen. Yeah,
That's his name.
I think so. Yeah, he did such a good job as Tony
Mm,
Blair in Queen too. But again, that was a very Queen sympathizing film, because that was basically saying how the Queen will handle Diana's death
mm,
from the perspective of an outsider, which is Tony Blair. And Tony Blair didn't like the Queen before. It was a very like a
yeah.
average way of sort of queen propaganda, so to say. So
I mean, for me, it's fascinating when all these grand stories, right? I mean, I see multiple biographies, right? Ultimately, all these grand stories of these grand people ultimately comes down to someone trying to get a validation from someone, a son trying to get a validation from mother. I mean, for example, even if I take something like, have you seen the movie W by about George Bush, right? That even that movie, right? Like for example, he's just trying
yeah,
to get the validation of his father, and he went as far as becoming a president to get that. And
yeah,
I wonder if he still got it, right? So again, Crown, there are just so this younger sister trying to get the validation of her elder sister, and it's just, I mean, I was when I was thinking about, I also thought about your piece that you wrote about your dad, which I don't want to bring up now, not appropriate to bring up. But what is it about this human? How far human beings can go, like to get the validation of the dearest ones. I mean, the it's the story of disappointed dads and disappointing sons is an endless saga, right?
it's endless, and it's a universal theme across cultures. It's the one thing that
Across
doesn't depend on
class.
languages, doesn't depend on class, doesn't depend on countries, doesn't depend on where you come from. So
Mm,
it's one universal bond. It's the most potent bond, and I've written that 10 times, 100 times. Like it's the most potent bond, and a lot of films use that as very easy bait, or like some of them use it as very lazy sort of uh, uh, devices in their narratives. But
mm.
you know
Telugu movies,
when it
Telugu movies.
I
Yeah.
mean, I've not seen enough, so I can't comment on it.
All
But
right.
we've seen even Bollywood do that.
Mm.
Like, it's not like it's India is famous for it. All of us have daddy issues. All of us have
Yeah.
like problems with our parents, and because we are so like in different generations. But I just feel like the way of humanizing such untouchable figures like presidents and
Mm.
queens and royals, the only way to humanize them is not through love and relationships. It's always through their parents. It's always through the bond that they share or don't share with their elders, with their family members, because that's that's the thing that we will only resonate with. We will not resonate with the way they speak, with the way they handle relationships, with the way they take their decisions of their life, and the way they close themselves out and make such huge sacrifices in their own personality. We will relate to their suppressed desires, because all of us have it. All of
Mm.
us grow up subconsciously wanting to do our parents proud. Whether our parents are good people or not, we all want to do it. Whether we had good relationships with them or not, we always dream of our walking up onto a stage and receiving an award and our parents in the crowd watching it. That is a classic scene in everyone's head when they start working and when they start to make something of themselves. And I think it all comes down to that, because like even the Crown using like people wanting validation from Olivia Colman, like her entire role over season 3 and season 4 has been like absolutely rebutting Charles and not giving him the validation he needs.
Yeah.
And most of her children, for that matter, not even a husband or a
Mm.
sister. So, it's such a universal thing. So, you're going to see it happening with every biographical picture, every book, every account that we see over the years. That's the only thing that humanizes them. We've seen that, like, it's very rarely that we do see a biographical sort of portrait that has nothing to do with the parents in either in
Mm.
flashbacks or in real time,
Right.
unless you see someone like Mark Zuckerberg, who really was such an asshole to begin with, that you already saw him sort of fuck over his friends over a period of time.
Yeah.
So you don't really need parents at some point in those in the cases of those figures. But I feel like Crown is so old school that it has to take the most old school relationship in the world, and that is
Right.
the pair.
Speaking of the crown, the lady that has the crown rested on her head, Coleman versus Foy. Is your straight up answer is Coleman straight away? Is it that simple?
Uh, it's not that simple. Like,
Right, exactly. Is it?
yeah,
I mean, it's for I mean, I've been following you on social media. For me, for
yeah.
you, simpler answer would be Sachin versus Lara, but this is not
Oh
simpler.
yeah, for sure, Lara. Right. uh, yeah, so
FIR,
I
FIR,
wish it
FIR,
was that
FIR,
simple.
FIR, FIR, FIR. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, totally. I wish it was that simple. But again, you're playing the same character 20 years apart, 30 years
Mm,
apart. Both of them are just like, and see, look, we didn't know Claire Foy before this. Okay,
Yes.
so those 2 seasons of The Crown really blew us away because she came from nowhere and absolutely owned that role in every way possible. We didn't even need to know Queen Elizabeth to know that the younger Queen Elizabeth to know that Claire Foy did a great job of it. And she just did. It didn't matter how close she was to the queen in real life.
Hmm.
She was a queen in her own sense, and she was a girl getting used to the fact that she's wearing a crown, and that for me was like a scintillating performance and very consistent over those 2 years. And that's when I only noticed it. Coleman, you expect it, you
Yeah.
expect something from it, so you're not really surprised by it. But at the same time, she gives so many new things to the role because we just saw her play a queen and win an Oscar for
Hmm.
that in the favorite.
Hmm.
So it's not like Coleman hasn't done royalty before, British royalty before, or whatever. It's just that uh, the way she plays Elizabeth is so distinct from I think any other great older actress of our generation. And if you've seen enough of Coleman over the years, even in a more modern roles like Broadchurch or anyone, or even in like Fleabag for that matter, even as a cameo and all, you see she has a very distinct way of acting for every single performance she gives. And the Queen, there's no hiding. She's doing
Hmm.
2 whole seasons of it, and the way she uses her lips in this season needs needs to be studied in acting schools over the years because she's not allowed to speak too much. She's not allowed to emote too much. But the way Coleman uses her lips, assuming that we know how Olivia Coleman generally in real life uses her lips, is really like something. For me, it was just constant wonder watching her in every other scene facing off against Margaret Thatcher, not being able to retort, not being able to say anything, but her entire gait changes when the way she uses her face and the way she uses her lips. So I felt like Coleman, of course, there's no comparison, but it'll be more interesting to see now, like once we are done with all 6 seasons, to see how all three measure up against each other.
And you point this performance in a wonderful article on season three that you write on Coleman's performance by pointing at this wonderful episode Aberfan and
Yeah,
the last scene where she that
yeah. So
I mean
that just I get goosebumps when I think of that scene. And I've been forcing a lot of my friends and a lot of people I sort of hang out with to watch Crown. All of them are film snobs, so most of them don't watch Crown because it is already so popular. They are like me
same.
also. To be fair, I watched Crown very late in life also, so I'm not going to pretend like I was not elite enough to begin it with. I just saw it was getting so much hype. I was like, okay, I'm going to wait for a while. But when I did start watching it, and when especially that Coleman scene in season 3, I still show it to people who have never seen The Crown in their lives. I was like, you
Hmm.
don't need to know who Queen Elizabeth is. You don't
Yeah,
need to
that's
know
that's
Olivia.
that's a great standalone episode on itself.
It's just a great standalone episode, a standalone scene. Like
Hmm.
just to think about the fact that a woman is worried about the fact about whether she has enough feelings left in her to emote, and then just like willing herself to cry on that one tear film, that is just masterful acting. Like for that alone, like I'd recommend The Crown to like every single person I know. And yeah, I mean Coleman. Yeah, it's great you pointed out that article. I totally forgot I wrote that last year. It's I think
Yeah.
after season 3 came out because I was so taken aback by her performance in those few episodes that. And Aberfan is a crowd favorite. There's no like
Yeah.
you can't find anything wrong with it. Like it's one of those episodes where as much as good as the Charles episodes are, as good as, but as far as the Queen goes and the Crown goes, that episode is as vulnerable as it gets. And I'm also a big fan of Moondust, which is Philip's
Oh
episode also
yes,
about.
yes. I mean, this
Uh,
this is exactly the reason why. Again, I want to point that I'm not a film critic, but this is exactly the reason why. If I had to rank all the seasons, right? I don't know if it's too early to rank or too late to rank, but nevertheless, I'm going to go and give it a shot. For me, the order would be three, one, four, two. What's
hmm.
yours?
Yeah, I'd say the same. Three was the best season, like for
Mm,
me too, because see, look, season 4 is more recent history, right? So we
mm,
are more familiar. We are starting to get familiar with the characters, with the arcs, because it is entering our lifetime.
mm.
And these are very famous events. Diana, once you put Diana in a series, the series automatically has extra pressure to sort of, and also at the same time, extra, sort of crowd mileage, because
Mm.
instantly people will like associate like reality with fiction.
Mm.
So that has an advantage and it has its own drawbacks. But as well as season 4 was made, I feel like season 3 really hit the ball out of the park as far as the filmmaking and the just the storytelling goes. Like every single character got their worth in that season, whether it's Margaret or whether, I mean, Philip, out of all the people, like the most unlikable character, the most staunch, like absolute, like if he was in India, he'd be like a terrible, like a Thakur sort of character in a village that nobody looks at. Like, but
Yeah.
he got an entire episode about his dreams and his aspirations, and it was so heartbreaking, right? That
Yeah.
instantly humanized him, because till then we didn't care a shit about him. And after that, only like in season 4, even when that very powerful sequence towards the end of the last episode of season 4, where he checks in on Diana and they have that little face off, and
Yeah.
he tells her that something about an outsider, and she
Mm.
tells him that no. I feel like Phillips, if we hadn't had that Moondust episode in season 3, we would have immediately judged Phillips and called him an asshole in season 4.
Big time.
But
Yeah.
now, because we have seen what each of them sort of have had to sacrifice, or have done it for whatever delusion they think that they are serving the country for,
Mm.
whatever the reason, they are still doing it, and they have still sacrificed their entire sort of personality for it. So I feel like some of the most memorable moments of all 4 seasons come in season 3.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And not to special mention that you had mentioned about, because I didn't have the time to do the recap, but I was doing the recap through your articles, and special mention to that wonderful episode that you reminded me of, Winston Churchill, where he literally hates his own painting. That episode.
That was and I'm glad I could do that, like article of like the 5
Yeah,
favorite whatever it is,
eight
or 8
eight
favorite
favorite
whatever,
episodes.
8 favorite episodes, because it gave me a chance, first of all, to do like a recap before season
Mm.
4 for my own, this thing. And it just I was going through all the episodes, and as a writer, as a film critic, when you're doing like listicles, like my 8 favorite, or like a recap sort of listicles you're
Mm.
doing, you you always assume that it's in your head already,
Right.
and when you watch it, you only watch a few scenes to refresh your mind.
Mm. Mm.
But when I started watching these episodes, I ended up watching the whole episode. I was like, there is no way I'm going to keep, like scrolling between scenes and between episodes, because just so engaging. And that Winston Churchill one was like a new one to me. Like,
Right.
even though I'd seen it like 2 years ago or whatever it is, for me it was like watching it all over again. And there was so much pathos in that entire episode, and his performance, and Winston Churchill again, one of my favorite performances across all 4 seasons. Like that is some acting, like on a
Yeah.
very very high level. And that particular episode, again, it's like the Philip episode, it's like the Charles
Mm.
episode. It depicts like powerful, unlikable people, arrogant people, who cannot take the fact that they are becoming fragile. They are
Yeah.
nothing in the larger scheme of things, in the larger scheme of the country. They are nothing, and that mortality will take over them. And that's just a beautiful episode for me. And yeah.
And just lastly, I mean, I would not like to use this line, but why do we like the crown? I mean, why do we like royal monarchy movies, right? For example, because I I have a weird relationship with opulence, right? So because I loathe on one hand, I loathe expensive weddings, all right, but every episode there'll be at least two expensive wedding ish parties in every episode, and it's just like I when I watch Crown, right, I just get this weird feeling like, how will a communist feel if he watches Crown? How would a socialist feel if he watches Crown, right? I mean, will he put aside all his thought and just appreciate the filmmaking? And this is I wonder if anyone has the chance to do this thought experiment. But what is it about royal monarchy movies? But these basically, Buckingham Palace is half the Buckingham Palace is basically a stolen crime scene, right? So I
Yeah,
mean, we are supposed to hate these folks.
yeah,
What is it? What is it? Colonial hangover, or it's what is it?
see, like, I mean, over the years, like, a lot of people haven't been able to digest the fact, at least a few readers of mine haven't been able to digest the fact that I'm such a big fan of The Crown. and then only the same thing, and I'm sick of hearing it. The same criticism is like, oh, but they are thieves, and how can you and that's no way to look at a series or a film or a story,
I mean,
that
may I interrupt you for just one
yeah,
example, right? Hitler is an asshole, all right.
yeah,
Downfall is a fucking great movie,
yeah.
right? So
It
yeah,
is a
sorry.
masterpiece.
Yeah,
Yeah, like, I mean, and you when you appreciate a series like The Crown or Downfall or anything for that matter, that doesn't imply that you are actually encouraging that legacy that it's about. The fact is, the filmmakers are going into that legacy and showing us things that we may or may not know. We are looking at them as just another family who are in the spotlight. Okay,
mm,
I don't give a shit about their legacy or what they did to India. Honestly, that is really, we are not judging the politics of the series. If that was the case, then we would have never liked even Mahatma Gandhi's films. He had problems too. Okay. Ask a lot of people who were like, after the partition.
mm.
They'll tell you the very honest truth. So that doesn't mean we can't appreciate biographical pictures or fictional takes on history, because for me, the reason so many people at least like The Crown or even secretly like The Crown is not because colonial hangover. It's for the same reason that the royal family within the series want to keep themselves relevant. For
Mm.
some bizarre reasons, they are always working against the tides of time. They are always working to update themselves and adapt themselves to the modern world and keep themselves relevant. They look at themselves as this analog telephone in a digital era, and they want to be a reminder of what the world has lost. Whether they are good or bad does not matter. The morality does not matter. But this is what the world used to look like in a black and white photograph. They are putting color to it, and that's what they think. That's why they think they still have the right to exist. Even now, so many countries are against the monarchy. They don't want them to exist. We can have our personal opinions about it.
Mm.
I personally think they're useless. They are just, for me, it's like entering a museum and seeing wax statues. Oh, this is great. It's lovely.
Yeah,
It's opulent. It's so funny. It's like watching a reality show about housewives at the same point.
yeah.
It makes no difference to me. But just the way that they work so hard to keep themselves relevant, even though they are such flawed characters, is the same reason even we want them, even we root for them in a very perverse manner to stay relevant. Because whenever we see underdogs in any film, any story, it's always about them keeping themselves somehow in sync with the times that is passing them by.
Mm.
And that is the definition. That is the most fundamental definition of an underdog. It doesn't matter if they murdered people. Even serial killers have to adapt with the times,
Right.
honestly. Like, so it's one of those things where we are also going to keep liking something that is about people who go out of their way, who sacrifice so much of their own souls to be something they're not, just because they think they're a symbol to the world, even though they are delusional. There's a lot of dignity in sort of appreciating their fight, their battle, because in some
Because
very weird
you
way,
wrote in one article, right? They are the soldiers in their own palace, kind of.
yeah, yeah, and they look at themselves as soldiers, right? Like
They look at
they look
themselves,
at
yeah.
themselves, yeah, they look at themselves as like no different from soldiers, except that the only difference is they live in palaces. Like, that's the only difference.
They
So,
eat in silver spoons, yeah.
yeah, correct.
Right. That is a fascinating chat, Rahul Desai. By the way, because I was so excited to do this podcast about Crown, I just totally forgot to introduce you in the first place. Rahul Desai is the film critic who got fired because he thought Salman Khan movie was not as good as Crown. So yeah, that is Rahul Desai, ladies and gents. He does a podcast. Can you please tell people about your social media presence, please? Because you do a podcast with Tanul Thakur, which I absolutely
Yeah,
love, and I recommend people to go and check them out. Uh,
yeah.
Please tell a little bit about your social media presence, real quick, please.
I mean, social media presence. So, like, my Twitter handle is Real Reptile. So that's how a lot of people
Mm.
over the years have found me on Twitter.
You
And
write for
yeah,
Film Companion.
I write for Film Companion. I used to write for Mumbai Mirror.
Mm.
Um, yeah, and I used to have a column with the Hindu till
Right,
the Hindu shut down.
right.
So yeah, I mean, so
Yeah,
thanks for
Thank you. Hopefully, when the next season comes, we would get back and do more speculative fiction. Probably there should be some speculative fiction podcast episode somewhere in the future. Hopefully, with
Fan
Rahul.
fiction, fan fiction is a thing. I'd be happy to write the entire fifth season. Honestly, I'm in a position to do that now.
Oh, absolutely. Let's do it over a podcast, hopefully, if possible,
Sure, sure.
over the next couple of years. Thank you very much, Rahul. Thank you very much, listeners and the Crown fans, especially, for tuning into this podcast. Till we see you next time. Bye, everyone.